Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode on Living on the Edge of Chaos. This is Aaron from Coffee for the Brain, and I am here just even before we hit record. I just knew this was going to be an amazing conversation. Even our little pre-chat we had of time, I am super excited for the guest that I have here today, and I think for all of you listening who, if you are listening to the podcast, you have definitely something that I think both of us have in common today, which is this idea of curiosity. And I think it's something that we're going to have a wonderful conversation around. So I am here with a friend from across the pond over in the UK, Clare. So Clare, I will start off before we dive into it, because I was reading through all the things that you do, have done, are doing, going to do, and it's a lot. And that in and of itself could be the show. But let's start off with giving you a chance to explain who are you, what do you do, and what in the world do you got going on?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's absolutely lovely to be here. I am Clare Inkseter and I run a company called the Curiosity Experiment. So in that, I do various different things, but one of those things is researching and testing interventions around curiosity. So ways to be more curious. And that has led me in many different directions. So I also consult at the moment around climate change and actually how can you use curiosity to address some of the complex problems in the world. And I teach yoga, I do various other things. So yeah, the list could go on. I'm a curious person.
Yes, you absolutely are. And as I got connected to you through Nest Labs and through a whole entire book with Anne-Laure Lecomte about curiosity and tiny experiments. And we were in this community, and I was like, through the conversations in there, I'm like, I just want to sit and talk with this person. Who is this Clare that seems to be doing such cool stuff? Because you're at this intersection of curiosity, neuroscience, behavior change, positive psychology, as I'm kind of going back and reading through your work.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, because I really want to nerd out about how you're thinking through that. How did you get into this space, like with true intention around curiosity and trying to bring that into companies, into organizations, into whoever it is that you're working with? Because it's so fascinating. It seems like something that we all have, and I think we do, but I don't always know we give it enough time. But yet you have almost kind of made it your mission, your value, and I love it. So how did you even get to this space where you're doing curiosity with other folks?
Yes. Well, so I actually started off, I'm a researcher by background. So I was a researcher in the corporate world in kind of marketing, and I was doing lots of stuff around behavior change and psychology and neuroscience actually as well. And increasingly, I felt a bit disconnected with that, and that I was using all of this wonderful knowledge to not necessarily for good in the world. So I also felt I guess I felt a bit disconnected with the work I was doing, and a
Mm.
little bit uh yeah, a bit kind of like there was something more to life. So I actually did a couple of things. So at that point, I decided to take a master's in applied psychology, applied positive psychology. And when I was doing, and that was, I had no desire for a degree or a certificate or anything like that. It was purely passion. It was a genuine following my curiosity of this seems interesting. I'd like to learn more. How can I get into this? And as I was doing that course, it was actually for me, it was one of those wake up in the middle of the night moments of just knowing you have to do something. So I woke up in the middle of the night knowing that I had to specialize in curiosity interventions and the applied side of curiosity. And I thought I was going to do something related to mindfulness or something along those lines, but I was like, no, absolutely, this has got to be curiosity. So through that master's program, I started creating and testing interventions around curiosity in the
Mm.
workplace, and actually looking at how incredibly powerful curiosity is obviously collectively for our world, but also for us as individuals in terms of our well-being. So the initial angle for me was around well-being and how curiosity has this wonderfully expansive and broadening perspective in terms of our well-being, in terms of us helping us find more meaning and purpose. And also in terms of creativity, in terms of innovation, in terms of diversity. So there's many different benefits to curiosity. So basically, I started experimenting in my own life. So I started creating these interventions, testing them out on myself, seeing whether or not my well-being had improved or my creativity had improved or whatever it was that I was looking into. And then over time, started sharing those with other people and within organizations. So I'm part of the Global Curiosity Institute. So there is a Global Curiosity Institute, and I'm a fellow there. And I do various training programs within organizations and things like that as well. And actually, that's how I've ended up doing the work on climate change and sustainability through training organizations in curiosity. So kind of following the breadcrumbs.
Oh, I love it. And I almost want to be like, gosh, I'm jealous. But that's only because I should take the plunge and explore my own breadcrumbs. But as you're talking, something that I grapple with, so I spent a lot of time in the K-12 education system, but I don't think it's much different in terms of corporation and who you're working with. I know it's not just corporation, but as you're working on climate change, something that I am constantly trying to figure out the ideas around is I don't think anybody is against curiosity, right? No one is like, no, we cannot have curiosity. We cannot have creativity. Like, no one's against that. But what I find is this tension or a friction where how do we value it enough to give it space? To
Yeah.
allow it to exist, right? Versus like it needs to be scheduled. Oh, we could put curiosity here for these 20 minutes on a Friday afternoon. Or you know what I mean? Or I mean
Yeah.
it's not like that. But the idea being is people want it. We want our kids to have this. We want our colleagues to have creativity and thoughts, but we don't allow like I feel like space to be able to sit and ruminate with ideas and follow the breadcrumbs. It was just everything is so just agenda, agenda, agenda. How do you tackle that? How do you frame that maybe in your work or as you work with others? Because I think it's definitely feels like this catch-22 space. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious how you are seeing it. Maybe I'm way off and you're seeing it something different, and that's perfectly fine too.
No, it's a beautiful question actually, and it's really interesting because although I think curiosity is outwardly encouraged and welcomed, although saying that hasn't always been the case. So curiosity killed the cat. There was often this connotation with
Mm.
curiosity that it was you were kind of naughty, you were breaking the rules.
Ooh,
And actually,
yeah.
I think you see that often through schooling. So you've probably come across this, the research around the number of questions that children ask at the age of, so your number of questions you ask peaks at the age of around 4. But by the time you reach the age you're going into the workplace, you barely ask any questions at all. And if you do ask questions, they're questions around kind of how do I fit in here and what's the right way to do things. And they're not genuinely like exploratory, curious questions. And that's often because the systems in which we're operating are kind of crushing our curiosity. And actually, it's exactly for the point that you're suggesting. It's around efficiency. And so often it's like we see it in the workplace, we see it in our individual lives. It's like we want to make things easy. The brain wants to go on autopilot. We want to find shortcuts. We want to just get things moving. And actually, you're right. Curiosity is kind of the opposite of that. It's instead
Right.
of closing things down, it's opening things up. And I guess for me, I've had to train myself in today's day and age to do that. So I think of it in the same way as I would go into the gym. So I'm literally like, I actually have to intentionally be curious. So a number of years ago, I stopped working full time. So I took Thursdays. I asked my boss if I could take Thursdays as unpaid leave and have them as Curiosity Thursday. So, and on those Curiosity Thursdays, I would just have interesting conversations. I would learn something new. I would follow my instincts on something. I would meet people. I would go places. And I had to intentionally carve out that time because
Mm.
otherwise something more important would have always been there. So I think there has to be an aspect of intentionality around curiosity in the world that we live in today.
I love that. And I was going to ask this question later, but your answer, I feel like it's more fitting here. I've been really interested in like the workflows of people. And so how you talked about you intentionally schedule or plan for curiosity. And I love that because I think it's if we don't do it, the time will get replaced with
Mm.
something else, right? It's almost like we got to put it on our calendar, like, and I've been trying to be better myself. Just a simple thing of scheduling time, actually putting on my calendar to walk my dog seems
Mm.
such a minimal thing that should just automatically happen because I have a 3-year-old black lab, so she knows when it's time to walk. But I mean, like putting that in there because I could easily fill that with something else. But there is value, obviously, in walking and being outside, value in obviously helping my dog, and then just being able to sit with my thoughts and kind of work through that. But what's your workflow in balancing curiosity and efficiency, right? Because we can't just not everybody has the luxury to I'm gonna say it, flounder sounds a little negative, but like flounder around and be like, what am I curious about today? Right. So how do you balance that being this voice of curiosity, but still we also got to get things done?
Yeah. Again, it's a really nice question. And I think it is through trial and error that I've kind of found my way here because you're absolutely right. It can feel like an indulgence, a kind of nice to have to be curious. And I think for me, the first thing I've probably done is realize the importance of curiosity in my life and in the world today. So you've probably come across this, but when you look at the World Economic Forum, the data around the skills of the future,
Yeah.
actually curiosity is absolutely at the heart of or it's like features a number of those top 10 kind of skills in terms of critical thinking, in terms of creativity, in terms of problem solving.
Yeah.
And so I know it's really important. And I also see it in my own life, in my relationship with AI. I can see how my brain has become almost lazy when I'm using LLMs.
Mm.
I'm kind of like, I'm defaulting sometimes to that. So I've given myself permission and I've actively chosen to be curious. And so I think that's a really crucial first thing. Number one, like, really know the importance of it and be purposeful around curiosity. And then secondly, I have scheduled it into my day. And actually, I'm really interested in how the brain works. So there's some brilliant books out there, like My Brain at Work, for example, is a brilliant book. And I'm really interested in the times when my brain is most productive for kind of tasks that require organization and getting things done. And I'm also aware of the times when my brain needs a bit more expansive thinking. So I'll schedule different times of day based on the different types of brain task that I'm doing.
Mm.
And within that, I'll schedule, and within that, curiosity features in different aspects to some extent. So, and within that, I'll schedule time for curiosity. So even the client that I'm working with at the moment on the sustainability work, we have a weekly Wonder Wednesday meeting, and it's half an hour every Wednesday morning that we come together and we'll just learn, like we'll either read an article that's interesting and discuss it, or we'll watch a little video, or we'll learn something about a subject, or somebody will teach us something. And it's like there's no agenda, it's not a lot of planning, it's a kind of bottom up curiosity.
Mm.
Um, and actually, that's one thing that I'll just mention as well. So that when it comes to curiosity, I like to look at the science of awareness as well. So you might know about this top down curiosity and bottom up curiosity. And top down is almost like when you have a problem you want to solve, or a question you want answering, or a topic you want to learn more about. And you're really, 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 really intentional about it. And it's purposeful curiosity, and you're not going to get lost, and you need to focus. And that's beautiful and brilliant and needed. However, there's also this aspect of bottom-up curiosity, and bottom-up curiosity is when you have no goal, you have no plan, you have no, you're walking your dog and you're looking out at what's happening around you, and you're out in nature and you're responding to the world rather than trying to control what you're doing. And that's absolutely essential as well, in my opinion, for those different aspects of curiosity. So there you go.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, you're talking about creative thinking skill in the World Economic Forum and the Future Jobs Report. I actually just referenced that in a piece I wrote this morning, and I was just double checking that it's the number fourth most valued skill right now, and by 2030 or whatever that big date is, it's still there at the top in the top four. And so it's definitely something that people see value in, and it's just how do we allow it to develop, mold, and kind of help us figure out who we want to be. But then I also look at it from educational lens, but we don't always have to put like a score to it. Like,
Mm,
like I think there's something to it where we are in this day and age and everything needs to be quantified with data and data
mm,
points. And I think there's a place for it, don't get me wrong, but there's also something just about the idea of allowing that to be. Like, that's the beauty of curiosity. That's the beauty of
mm.
taking that into some sort of creative endeavor. Um, you talked AI, and I've been reading recently your work on LinkedIn around AI, and I was looking at a post, I think it was from January 2024 that you wrote. Not that you have to like remember everything that you wrote, but you were talking about how you're trying to leverage AI with kind of being productive, and then also like, but you talked just like you said earlier, but like make sure the brain isn't lazy, and so how are talk to me a little bit more of how you're thinking through AI and large language models as both kind of like an assistant and a muse, right? Like what are you noticing? Because I feel
Mm,
like I need to rewrite like my philosophy. I feel my default systems have changed and I haven't checked it in a while. And the other day I was like, holy cow, we have become quite dependent on,
mm,
the opinion, so to speak, of the algorithm versus like just you do it.
mm. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That having that awareness is the key part of it. Being able to observe your own behavior and reactions to what you're doing, I think, is such a crucial part. So for me, I mean, LLMs are a great friend. I have found them to be a wonderful help in a lot of things that I do.
Right.
However, I absolutely want to be in the drive, like, as much as I can, be in the driving seat of how I'm using them, because I'm well aware of the impact that they're having on my agency, on my brain, on my ability to think, really. And I don't know, you've probably seen the research that I don't think I'm not sure it's final piece of work, but the research from MIT that was around actually how brain engagement is lower in the people that are using
Mm,
defaulting to LLMs, and actually
sure.
how much less likely you are to remember the information once you've engaged with an LLM. So if you're using it as a learning tool in that way, for me, there's a real opportunity to tune into your curiosity, because curiosity. I mean, this is a fascinating thing. This absolutely blows my mind about curiosity. So curiosity you can train, and you can get into that curious space. And when your curiosity's been ignited in some way, whatever you then go and learn next on whatever subject, it could be completely different, you're more likely to remember. So curiosity actually has this kind of multiplier effect for memory. So it amplifies
Mm,
your memory. So it's a great tool to use in conjunction with LLMs to some extent. It's like, how can I ignite my curiosity before I go in and ask this question? And actually, at the Institute, we talk about um, this curiosity curve. So actually, it's really hard to be curious if you know nothing at all about a subject. And it's really hard to be curious if you think that you know everything on a subject. And actually, the sweet spot is where
mm,
you know just a little bit, but you want to know more. And so actually, if we're using LLMs in a way that we're kind of like, oh, you just come up with it. You just come up with the answer. You just write my essay. You just write my content. You just write whatever. Then actually, we're not really engaging that curiosity at all. And we're not necessarily using them in a way that is efficient and effective. Whereas if we already know something about a subject and we can have a bit more of a dialogue and a bit more of a, do you think that's right? And what about that? And how about this? And have you like, it's a very different relationship. But I think there has to be, for me anyway, there has to be some level of expertise on the subjects I'm interested in to then be able to engage effectively um, with LLMs. I definitely haven't figured this out. I definitely haven't. I think it's an ongoing project for me. I've also noticed that for me, I kind of split out the different tasks into productivity tasks or efficiency tasks and creativity and curiosity tasks. So the
Mm.
tasks where it can save me a lot of time, I'm like, brilliant. Could you just do this and save me all this time because that's excellent? And then I can use my curiosity and creativity to go off and do something else. But I can also use LLMs to be a sparring partner for me. So help me come up with new ideas on this, help me come up with new names, and what are some things that I might not be seeing, and how can I learn about more about this? So some of it's around because asking really good questions is the prompt engineering is huge now, but like asking really
Yeah.
good questions is a great curiosity skill as well, I think.
Oh man, there's just so many places I want to go with this. Um, yes, something that I've been sharing a lot in some workshops and conversations in schools and also with some organizations outside of school is I say we're in the space of the age of available answers, right? Like I can between, I mean, that's been there with Google, but now even with AI, and yes, those answers they could be accurate, biased, not to go down that rabbit trail, but like the answers are readily available. And so it's how do we reframe the headspace to not be so necessarily negative where, how do we shift from trying where we've for so long been teaching kids how to answer questions and start to get them to question the answers, and so it's like an invert of curiosity. I love your curiosity, the research around that. If you think you know so much or you do know so much, you lose curiosity. If you don't know enough, it is kind of hard to be curious. Talk to me more about that because one of the things that I am passionate about is like inquiry and wonder and purposeful play in classrooms. And I think it also moves into organizations and work as well. And trying to help people see that we don't have to have a lockstep. We know exactly this linear path, it like learning in life is non-linear. Talk to me more about that because what I try to figure out is try to find this space where you launch this idea, this project, this authentic learning experience with just enough to spark the wonder and the kids that can create their path of how they want to go about, answering a question. And that means they're going to go hog wild and go everywhere. We still have things we got to adhere to, but kind of the wide walls. Kids can take any approach they want, and still, as long as they can justify their learning, they're there. That research that you were talking about is fascinating to me because I think that's something that it's like, how do you find that sweet spot? Where so much of education, anyways, is let's teach them everything and then let's do a project. Well, we've already learned everything, so why do the project? And talk to me more
Yeah.
about that sweet spot, that flow state icon leverage point because
Yeah.
I think that's really cool for people to kind of think some more about.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you talk about flow state because actually, a flow is a concept within the curiosity research that's looked at quite a lot in parallel. Because flow, as you'll know, is like the flow channel is when you find that right balance of skill and challenge. So where you've got just enough skill and it's just challenging enough for you to feel both safe to explore and also interested. So you've got enough energy behind it as well. So I think it's interesting you bring up flow. And I imagine within education that actually that's a really relevant concept as well in terms of always just being on the edge of the next step and the next discovery and the next kind of way of wondering. So I think that's an interesting aspect of it. I'm just thinking back to a story. So both my parents are educators. So my mum and dad were both teachers. My dad was a
Oh,
professor at
okay.
university, and my mum was a teacher. And there were so many things that as I was growing up, I now look back and think, oh, that was great for curiosity. So, for example, I famously, on the first day of every school holiday, would say to my mum, oh, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. And like within the first hour, and my mum intentionally wouldn't fill my day with lots of activities and lots of things to do. She would allow me that space to kind of create my own path through the holidays, create my own, and I had the most wonderful, like, we'd put on all these shows and games and radio stations and like all these different things that we would do that with my friends when I was growing up, which was, and I think that kind of space, actually having that space to pause and consider and actually do nothing for a little bit and to actually allow that to then see what bubbles up is,
Yeah.
I imagine, just as important for a child as it is for an adult, because we hear with adults these days that so many people have lost what fun means to them, or so busy all the time that they don't really have any hobbies, or they don't know what their hobbies are anymore. And it's like, I don't know how you find that when you're always busy. So when you're
Mm,
always doing, you can't listen, you can't hear, you can't find that creativity that's bubbling up inside you. So I imagine that's part of it. And just another story about my family growing up. So my dad was another incredibly curious person. So I like his curiosity was really vast in terms of curiosity of other people as well. So I
mm,
think that's another element. So actually, at the Curiosity Institute, we talk about having curiosity of the self, curiosity of others, and then curiosity of the world. And when we think about curiosity, often we talk about I think we think about curiosity of the world, like how can you go and be interested in learning about this subject or learning about, this new whatever
yeah.
it is. But actually, those two other aspects are so vitally important as well, because curiosity of the self enables you to self-reflect, to listen to that kind of what's bubbling up inside you and what direction to go in, and also to be able to say, oh, did I like that? Did I not like that? Was that good? Was that something I want to do again? Was that something I don't want to do again? And it's such an important skill to have. And actually, the curiosity of others is like it is a brilliant aspect of curiosity, because it's like a genuine interest in how other people's experience of life is
Mm.
and what it might be like to live in someone else's world or be stepping into their shoes. And I always remember my dad, one day I came down to the breakfast table, and my dad had every single newspaper out on the table. So he was, and I said, what on earth are you doing? Why are you reading like every paper from today? Like, why are you reading them all? And he said, well, I need to know what information everyone's consuming. I need to be able to understand the messaging
Mm.
that people are being shared, and actually to have some critical thinking around that, and to be able to understand other people's perspective, other people's points of views, and my point of view better as well. And
Mm.
so I think there's something around that aspect of curiosity that's so important today more than ever. That's so inclusive and yeah, helps us to understand each other a bit better too. I've gone off
Yeah.
on a bit of a tangent. I've forgotten
No,
the question.
no, it's perfect because it brings together two things that I have been constantly like swirling in my brain, and I know there's something to it. I don't have the words or the connective tissue yet. So first is last week I finally returned back to my local public library and I checked out a book, which was something I used to be in the I would go to the library like 3, 4 times a day or a week and just grab books, and I would check out 10 books and maybe I read one, maybe it didn't matter. But the idea was like, there's just all this stuff. And I got away from that, and I returned last week, and they had redesigned the entrance. And it was really interesting. They had all these kind of lounge chairs, and there was at the time when I walked in, there was all these elderly gentlemen, but there's a whole wall of newspapers, and these guys were just sitting in their own little world, their ecosystem, reading newspapers. The one guy put one away and grabbed another one, and in my brain, I'm like, you're just going to read the same thing again, but it's not, right? This perspective
Yeah,
of like, what are people
yeah.
consuming? So it connected me to your father, but more importantly, the other thing is this idea of being bored.
Mm,
And I don't know that we know how to be bored anymore. And you kind of talked about that just a little bit ago, right? Like we don't know what our hobbies are. We don't necessarily know like because we're so scheduled. I think about my children and all their sports are scheduled with a trainer, with a travel team, with whatever, or we go from school to this, to this, to this. And none of that stuff is necessarily bad. But I like whatever happened to just going to the park and creating a game or playing the
mm,
game without adults. Or I think about every single person, and I did this last night. Every time there was a downtime in between a volleyball game or whatever, we go
screen.
right to this.
Yeah.
How how do we can train our brains, right? Like
Mm.
how are you seeing that space with the importance of curiosity? Because I think we have like we don't know what to do with ourselves anymore. It's like, oh, do I have to like talk to people or can I just for me who's an introvert, I can hide, right? I can make
Mm.
it look like I'm doing something important and I'm really not.
I think it's so true. It's like it's never before been easier to distract ourselves. Well, actually, what do I know? Maybe it was always easy to
Yeah.
distract ourselves. But I feel like the technology that we have available to us is it's like a drug, isn't it? It's already kind of screaming at us saying, "Come over here, come over here."
Yeah, yeah.
And so, if we have even one moment to do nothing, the chances are we'll reach for something because that's how we've been conditioned over the last few years. And I think it's also this conditioning around like busyness is almost like a social, there's a social status, it's a
Mm,
status thing, isn't it? It's like if
it
you're
is.
busy, you're important.
Mm.
And actually, I remember hearing this man speak. I think he was called Tony Crab, and it was brilliant. He had everyone standing up saying, "Busy is dumb," and I was like, it was absolutely brilliant." Though I still remember it because I was like, "It's so true. Busy is dumb. Like, why do we think it's a good thing to be busy all the time? Why is that?" I remember I did from that moment. I made this change. Whenever anyone used to greet me, they would say, "How are you?" And I remember I always used to say, "Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm really busy." And then now I was like, I'm very happy, I'm very well, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
no need to go into the busy. It's not.
Right.
But it's interesting because it taps into status because it's thought to be important. And I think what it comes down to for me, for in my life anyway, is I've probably started questioning more around what my view of success is, and actually how
Mm.
my view of success isn't necessarily the societal view of success or the view of success that I had 10 years ago, or, whatever, whatever. And I've started challenging that a bit and saying, actually, I remember I was just putting this into the course, in fact. I remember I used to organize my weeks at the start of the week. I'm quite an organized person. I plan a lot, and to
Yeah,
some
that's me.
extent, I felt quite robotic at times. I was very structured, very planned in what I was doing, and I've had to learn to release that actually and create space
Mm.
for more fluidity and more serendipity and more just you don't really need to have a plan, just see where you go, like what direction do things go in. And I remember I used to say to myself, what are all the things I have to achieve this week? Like, what do I need to get done? I had a very much an achievement mindset. And I actually went hiking in Nepal. And I don't know what happened to me in Nepal, but something shifted in my brain where it was just such a different way of life. And that when I came back, I was like, I stopped saying, like, what do I need to achieve this week? What do I need to do? And it was more like, how can I make this week as enjoyable as possible? How can I kind of
Mm.
use my energy efficiently this week? Or how can I but it was that real shift from like achievement to enjoyment, and it changed how I lived each day. It still does. It still does. And so of course I need to get things done. Of course I I have to deliver, but in a different spirit, in a different way, in a different yeah, just in a different way, I guess.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Like to me, it's already like making me think about my own approach. I have found myself in this stage of life becoming like almost super robotic where I do map out everything of the week and I need to know. And I didn't used to be that way. And I don't think it's inherently bad, but I feel like it's almost like a mechanism to feel like I have control in this
Mm,
space where we really don't have control, and I have to like acknowledge that. So I like your framework, and I think it's I like how you shifted it. It's a little thing, right? How you introduce yourself, and not talking about how busy we are. And I know I'm guilty of that, and almost everybody you talk to, that's how they start. But I think that's a wonderful kind of challenge for listeners because I know even when we first joined here on the Zoom before we hit record, and we asked how your day was, and you're like, "Oh, it's beautiful out. I went swimming in the water, and I did yoga." And I'm like, it that response, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to that sense, recalibrates the whole direction and energy of things. So I think it's one of those things that I'm just like, as you're sharing that, I'm like, yeah, like I actually felt my body and energy shift differently to that response of a conversation versus if we both have been like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. What do we, well, you know what I mean? Like, and that,
yeah,
that takes a toll, I think, over time. And then we
yeah.
kind of get into that modality, right? And I think there's a way that we can offset that into some more curiosity elements and also just more proactive. So, that's so good. I have what I'm looking at time. I gotta be respectful of time, and so we're gonna pivot here a little bit because there's definitely something that I want to know more about. And I was reading. This is actually from a blog post of yours. I think it was 3 years ago, but I found it super fascinating. Another little connection of things that I'm trying to figure out that you do, and you have created. You had a blog post about explaining the metaphor of curiosity around an octopus. Not that you have to like
Yeah.
remember everything you wrote, but I love that metaphor. But you talk about and you do, and you create these curiosity sprints. And my brain geeked out because as I work in schools and classrooms, I am teaching students the idea of self-autonomy and trying to layer in Scrum and Agile principles into project
Mhm.
management where they are designing the learning pathways to hit the big rocks of standards and
Mm.
assessments and whatnot. So I just want to hear more of your thoughts around curiosity spurts or how I just gave you a whole bunch of things. So wherever you want to take it, but I can't leave this conversation without at least talking about it because I was reading through. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's another thing. I love it. I'm so happy this person is saying yes to talk. So wherever you want to go with that, it's not even a question. I just really was excited, and I just have to make sure I hear you talk about something of it.
Something on this topic. Okay, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So in my corporate work, so in the corporate work, a whole heap of corporate organizations went through this big shift from waterfall to agile. And so for maybe if the listeners don't know, waterfall was like where you have everything planned out up front, you plan it out, and then it might take you a long time to deliver it, and then you might get to the end and be like, ta-da, and then everyone's like, we don't need that anymore. And agile is the opposite. So it's where you kind of start before you're ready and you kind of have lots of different things going on at once and you know what you're doing for that sprint, but you don't need to know what happens you don't need to have all the answers. So it's much more experimental. It's much more around a culture of learning, actually. And it's like failure is completely acceptable. It's about it's about circular growth and learning and using tools to help you do that and actually managing teams in that way. And I found that to be a really liberating way of working. And actually I kind of train that in onto projects that I'm working with in whatever capacity, because I think it gives an individual autonomy to be able to then like you take a ticket basically. You say, I'm going to work on this task, and you go and you say, I'm going to be responsible for this. So it taps into that intrinsic motivation as well, which I think is so important when it comes to change actually and growth. So say for example, I have 10 different things on this project to do. I say, oh, I'm really interested in how to develop online courses. So I'm going to take this away and I'm going to work on this. And actually, I'm going to work out over the next 2 weeks, what is it that I'm going to commit to doing? How am I going to, what is it I'm going to deliver within those 2 weeks? And how am I going to explore it further? So I think in probably a few years ago, this is where I remember I was in an old job, and I remember talking to a board about the way that they were doing their work. And I had two pictures, one of a tank and one of an octopus. And I was like, what if we didn't work in this way, like with this tank in this old school way? And actually, we need to be more like an octopus. And it became a bit of a running joke that we called the octopus Oprah. And it was like Oprah the octopus with all these different projects and arms and legs and exploring and being interested in what's happening and learning. And so that's how the octopus came about. But also, it then prompted a lot of, actually, I still do this today. I've developed this curiosity experiment canvas where it is essentially a 2 week sprint. And the 2 week sprint starts with noticing something that you're drawn to or feel like you want to explore further, or something that feels off in your life in whatever way. Then it's like setting up your test criteria for your experiment. So being able to say, okay, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks. What is it I want to test? So this is like going back to the interventions for me. I would be like, I'm going to test whether if I like, oh, I don't know, let me think of an example. Like if I do the originality test, the Guildford original uses test every day for 14 days, whether that helps my creativity. I'm going to do this and see whether it has the impact I'm looking for. And then there's space on this canvas to tick off the days that you do it, because of course we've done Anne Law's work on tiny experiments. We know that it's purely data. It doesn't matter if you do it or not. It's about learning. It's about, reflecting on that experience as well.
Right.
And then there's space on the other side of the canvas that's all around reflection and actually, how did this go? What did you learn? And really, I think all of this for me is about learning. So you might have heard of Satya Nadella in terms of the Microsoft
Oh, yeah.
leader, and he talks about having a learn it all culture. And actually, it's not about being know-it-alls. It's not about being the best at everything. It's about being really, really good at learning. And actually, I think for me, that's been my experience when I wanted to make changes in my life, but I wasn't sure how. I was like, I'm just going to turn these into 2 week sprints and figure it out. And it's been so empowering actually, because there are so many things that I don't know how to do. Like I actually have no clue. I don't know how to do many, like I remember I was learning this statistical software and I thought, I literally don't know how to use this. And I opened it up and I was like, oh gosh, like what is this? But I was like, actually, this is an invitation for curiosity. So how can you spend the next 2 weeks like learning? Who can you learn from? What videos can you watch? How can you dig into this deeper? How can you turn this into an experiment where you grow? And it feels good to do that. It feels good because you're building confidence, I think, in your own ability to learn and to grow.
So good. Claire, this has been so amazing. What a bundle of joy you are. And I've been writing down all these notes for those not everybody can see, but like I'm like, oh yes, that's a great question. Oh yes. So I have found this, and obviously I will dive deeper into your work and the other things that you've suggested. But as we wrap up here, two final things. One, if there's anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you want to make sure listeners get a chance to hear, any other final thoughts or ideas, I want to make sure you have that opportunity. And second, all this will be linked in the show notes. All the references to stuff that you've talked about, I'll link. But I always like to say, if someone is at a red light, maybe you should just be bored and not be doing this, or you're out walking your dog and they want to know more about you. Where are also some of the best places for them to explore more of your work? I have, without a doubt, know the people listening are going to be diving into your work, because it's been such a phenomenal conversation. So any last final thoughts or wisdom, and where are the best places for people to find you?
Well, firstly, thank you. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I love the topic of curiosity, so I am always delighted to speak about curiosity. So if anyone wants to follow up with me, please, please do. Thursdays are a good day.
Yeah, yes.
But any day is good. And you can find me. So I'm Claire at the Curiosity Experiment, and obviously we can put that in the show notes.
Yep.
curiosityexperiment.co.uk, and Clare Inkster on LinkedIn. And one thing I'm really just curious about before we finish is, please, can you tell me what the pictures are on your shirts? I can't work it out. Are they doors? Are they bricks? Are they windows?
They are. So these are all doors. And so it's probably a little hard to see, but they're the Disney Pixar movie Monsters Inc. These
Ah,
are
yes, I
the
see
characters peeking
now.
around. But
I love it.
this feels like doors of possibility. So I like I have a lot of these kind of like bold shirts, and I like to wear them when I go into schools and do work. But knowing that we're gonna be talking about curiosity, I was like, I gotta have this shirt. Like, there's all these doors of possibilities. I think it's kind of thematic for what we're gonna be chatting with. So yeah.
And I absolutely love it. I do the same with yellow. Whenever
Okay.
it's Curiosity Thursday or I'm doing Curiosity, I'm like work, I'm always wear yellow. I'm like,
I
it's a
love
great
it.
curious color.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Claire, this has been such a pure delight, not just in terms of learning, but nerding out with someone who I think has a lot of similar passions, and you are just a wealth of knowledge. Thank you for all that you do, taking time to chat here today, and all that you continue to create and put out into the world for all of us to remember the importance of being curious. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.